Here we go.
All right.
All right, guys, how's it going? This is the Korean American Film Fest, the 14th annual film fest that we're doing. We are doing things a little differently. It's everything's pretty much virtual. You guys can check out all the fun films that are being released at the film festival between the 20th of October to the 31st. Um, this is going to be a Q&A where we're going to be talking with one of the filmmakers from one of these films. Uh, one of the films that we're going to be discussing is called One Last Monster. In case you guys don't know, it's a 20-minute short film. It's basically about an empress named Yura from a world called Adin, where she's basically confronting a lot of challenges as a ruler and trying to decide whether to trust or kill a monster that has just entered her world, and um, trying to figure out if this monster is here to help or cause harm to her people.
Mm-hmm.
So we are here to talk with one of with the director himself, Gene Kim. So Gene Kim, thank you for stopping by and talking with us about your incredible film. I actually got to see it twice.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Pretty amazing. Um,
All
so I want to talk a bit about how this all got started for you making this
right.
film. How did you come up with the concept?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me and just taking the time to do this interview. Appreciate it. And to the festival for having my film. I think it was a very long and a wild process because I had started when so a little background, I was an intern at Pixar and I worked at Disney's Blue Sky Studios after for a number of years in animation. And during that time, I realized, I'd like to focus more on creating my own content. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was to create something based on the anime and sort of Final Fantasy games that I was familiar with growing up, but also try to say something of substance. So visually, I knew I wanted an action adventure. Um, and it sort of became based on ancient Korea, which is what the world of Adin is based off of, um, based on sort of my understanding of Korean history, um, which tied in with the main sort of the idea that I wanted to explore was, as you recounted, the Empress has to deal with the fact that there's this monster and she doesn't know whether to trust him or not. And her world, like Korea in ancient times, was invaded over and over again, not by other countries, but in the movie's case, by extraterrestrials. So she's a bit xenophobic and paranoid, and she has to confront her prejudices. So I thought, there might be a chance to like tell this tale about getting out of your comfort zone and dealing with your prejudices by reinterpreting Korean history in an action adventure. Um, so I don't know if that quite answers the question, but those are some of the trains of thought that were going through my head when I was writing it.
No, I could definitely see a lot of the influences that you were talking about with
Mm.
Korean culture. Um, does that, like, with your background, did it help trying to, you know, put these influences into the film? Like, did you had to do any research or trying to dig deep into that culture to, put into the film?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely did because even though I speak Korean, having grown up in the States, it's not something I can claim any sort of like comprehensive knowledge of in terms of history or culture. Um, so that was fun to like get a bit more, get inspired by actual history and events. And what was interesting is that I read that Korea in like the 15th century or maybe it was 17th century, in response to, foreign invasion, they closed their borders off and they became isolationist. I think Japan and China did similar things around that time in history. And so things like that, little details like that, helped sort of create the motivations for the characters, even though there's like fantasy elements talking animals and action elements. I still wanted to ground it or offset that stuff with more realistic, historical based or psychology based things.
Was there like any particular type of animation that inspired you when you were creating this world and all these characters for the
Hmm.
movie?
Um, I'd like to think I was trying to marry sort of like Studio Ghibli doing Princess Mononoke with Pixar doing maybe The Incredibles or something like that. Because there's strengths, I would say, and weaknesses in both approaches to animation, sort of Eastern and Western. And it's interesting to try to be influenced by the two. And then on top of that too, like I think there's a lot of anime out there about Japanese stories, but I haven't really seen that been done with Korean stories, even though now with the rise of manhwa and things like webtoons, that's becoming more popular. So I thought that would be a cool experiment to try as well.
Did you like when you were coming up with the concept? Like, did you have to dig deep into uh, your experience as an animator when you were trying to put this all together? Because I know that you worked with a small team to
Mm,
put this whole film together. Like, was there
mm.
like any challenges that you had to face?
Yeah, I think, and I got to give a shout out to my co-animator Elmer Barcenas, who's brilliant, and we basically did 10 minutes of animation each, which comes out to maybe like 15,000 drawings a person, which is a lot. And then everybody else who helped, Lulu Chen, our sound designer, Jeremy, or composer and sound designers, and everybody else. Um, yeah, I think the most challenging thing, funny enough, was not was try to was trying to get the action across in the simplest way possible, because I knew we didn't have an infinite budget and we didn't have infinite resources to pull off all the craziness, and yet here I am trying to build as big a tale as possible, something like Journey to the West, for those who are familiar with that story. And so trying to figure out clever ways, like, okay, like this shot, we have the monster walking, but it's covered. Let's cover the legs with a wall, so that we can save on foot animation. Or let's cut down the number of poses we need for hand articulation in this shot. Um, Not to say that we wanted to lowball the quality, but we were just trying to be really strategic with what we had. So I think that was the most challenging thing, more than any specific technique, I would say.
And how long did it take for you guys to work on the film? I suppose it probably took maybe a couple of months to work on it.
So I was writing it on and off since 2012, and I think 2017 is when I'd spent a year working with David Zung, who's an amazing NYU professor who teaches storyboarding, getting his critique as I would come up with versions of the story. So once that was locked in, the actual animation took about like a year and 3/4 to like 2 years, I think, with me and Elmer. And then at the end, a bunch of other interns that we got on to color everything. So it was a marathon for sure.
And I also like the amazing cast that you guys brought in for this film. There's some renowned actors that were in this movie. Um, One that I probably want to mention is Martha Harms, who's pretty big in the voice acting industry.
Yeah, she gave a great performance, I think.
Yeah, I thought so too. How did you guys get in touch with her and the rest of the voice actors? Did,
I used backstage.com, which I'm sure for those who make content out in the audience or watching this are very familiar with. I just put up a notice with the concept and some storyboards, and uh, to my surprise, got a really big response and good pool to draw from. So I worked with Elmer to narrow it down to the roles.
uh, and I know you guys, you were able to showcase this film across different festivals around the world, actually.
Mm.
What was the reaction like when you guys were able to showcase the short film across all well, throughout, all these festivals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been positive, and I think people are surprised that, oh, here's an animated short that's independently made that's this long. Um, because it is hard to anybody who makes animation out there, seriously bless you guys because it's so complicated. Um, so that's been pretty grateful, and I'm just grateful that like this is an original idea, and when I look at the film, I see its flaws, technical, narrative. So like it's funny for me to watch. So, but I'm just grateful that I guess something resonates, whether it's the message I was trying to get across or the artwork in different contexts. So yeah, the fact that there's room for this long story, I think I just find that really surprising. We have yet to play festivals in East Asia. Part of it being I'm not familiar with the scene there or the how to apply to festivals there, but that would be really, really fun to see, especially the home Korean crowd, what they would think of the Marvel movie version of their mythology.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, like, if you got to show it to any audiences, with from Korea, or basically those living, any
Mm.
immigrants from the country, like if they really.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have friends in Seoul and Tokyo who have seen it, and I think they generally really like it and find it interesting. It's like Korean culture reinterpreted by an American, so it's a bit of a mind bend for them, I think, in a good way. Um, I think here too. I mean, part of the, I should say, I guess maybe unsolicited plug, but I've been aware of KAFFNY since high school, and so I think that's why it means so much for me to be showing as part of this, because in actuality, this is the home crowd, if anything, and maybe Monster's sort of a nature that it is a film about Korea, but it's made by a Korean American leading the production. I mean, maybe it's the perfect combination of traits.
Yeah, speaking of traits, I like the themes that were presented in this movie,
Thank you.
especially with the trying to figure out, like, how to become, more, more more
Like,
experience with, being able to lead your people, and also, like, trying to figure out, like,
mm,
a monster, because, like, with this movie, it's I guess you can kind of interpret it in different ways, but I like
mm,
the way that this one was particularly shown, like how one person's actions can, you know be judged by what they are. Like, they could be
mm,
kind or become, the monster, as the movie, perfectly displayed.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. Hopefully, I'm not spoiling it, but it's really the actions that make the monster, which is sort of the core idea. Um, yeah, too, and I mean, I think especially it's funny because I started writing it, or the idea started coming together around the 2016 election, where these themes of like, oh, us and them, and like demonizing others and building walls instead of bridges, we're becoming, and nations leading more towards the hard right, were becoming a thing. And so I thought it's just really funny. It wasn't my intention originally, but it is really funny how some of the themes seem to fit in with the current political atmosphere. Um, but at the same time, um, I wanted to show a story of like, okay, here's this character who is flawed, but she has good intentions. And what makes her, in my view, a hero is the fact that she has the guts to say, I am flawed and I'm going to fix it, at whatever cost.
Yeah, because I like that, this pretty much resonates with what's happening, in this political landscape.
Mm,
Uh, there's certainly some parallels here and there with the movie, you know, trying to depict, like what's been going on with this country,
right.
especially with minorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, how important was that for you to be able to, you know, showcase that message across, you know, with this film?
Mm. And you know, I never really know if I did it entirely successfully, so I'm grateful to hear that, you know, something came across. Um, I think it was very important because, you know, regardless of the politics of any time or now, like I realized as I was working at Disney and at Pixar that like the movies that I love the most are the ones that combine visual entertainment or just entertainment with substance. And I really wanted to make something with, you know, that tried to have both. Like if it failed, then fine, but at least I tried. Because you look at the Pixar movies and their stories are like, wow, let's talk about, you know, Earth as an entire trash yard, or let's go on a journey with some fish, and it's like visually really fun stuff. But then the lessons about like, okay, the father learns to overcome his fear of losing his son out on this odyssey, or, you know, in the case of Wally, right? It's like what does humanity become with the overindulgence of technology? It's like I can take that home. So it was important, or even something like, you know, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, or, you know, the most commercial properties out there. They still have something to say about, you know, what we struggle with inside. So I feel like, yeah, if I didn't have that, then it wouldn't have been worth doing.
I remember you were talking about being, you know, like
Mm,
when you know, like you were interning with Blue Sky Studios and Pixar.
mm.
Uh, how much of that experience helped you as an independent filmmaker?
Oh, that's a great question, man. Um, I think a lot because when you work there, you see what the requirements are for any production, what the demands are. And obviously, when you're working a small skeleton crew, you can't compete with, you know, the battleships that are Disney and Pixar, but you can take some of the mentality to try to optimize what you have. So from things like using Slack and, you know, calendar apps to keep everybody in sync, um, you know, to keeping schedules and being like an Excel fiend. Because I also learned how to produce while doing this too, in addition to animating and everything. Um, you know, those were good skills to have. At the same time, and, you know, with all due respect to House of Mouse and Pixar, like it sort of taught me like what I didn't want to do, because for as many great titles as Disney and Pixar has, you know, there's plenty of titles that are clearly like a cash grab. Like I remember they announced Ice Age 5 when I was there, and they're like, this is one you're going to work on next. And I thought, oh boy, you know, I don't think, I was surprised we had an Ice Age 4. This seems like a cash grab. So I think that just forced me, like, I sort of asked myself the question, if you had $200 million and you were to direct something, like, what would be the nature of it? Would it be like this cash grab thing, or would you try to explore deeper to say something? So I think in so many ways, it was such a good sort of reference point to have as I was navigating my own production.
Is that something that you're looking forward to doing, you know, going forward, being able to tell,
Mm.
you know, stories like these, like whether it's a short film or something more like a feature, like is that something that you're gravitating towards?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm currently shifting now towards working as a storyboard artist, and I'd love to, you know, hopefully once COVID clears, like rejoin other commercial productions again, because the collaborative environment of those studios is amazing. Even though freelancing is all right now remotely, but yeah, in terms of my own stuff, that's absolutely that's the ultimate end goal. The dream would be to be able to make my own content, or at least be in a position where I could learn about what makes good content, what is good storytelling, um, as opposed to like, you know, this sort of decisions I was making were like, should I open this file or that file? Like, how do you program this? Or like, hey, this is broken, or hey, this file takes half an hour to open, which are not exactly things that make me a better storyteller. You know, so
Uh, so, um, uh, we're kind of in an interesting time right now with
Mm,
you know, with this growing pandemic, which
mm,
has kind of changed the work environment for many people in different
right.
industries, especially in film and animation.
Mm,
How has that affected you when, you know, working on, you know, animation or film or what have
mm.
you? Like, has that changed, you know, even prior to uh, when all this went down?
Yeah, another really great question. What's really interesting is we finished this film last October, and then so the pandemic was just a few months um, due from that point. Looking at the timeline, and what was interesting is like we were already like all working remotely anyway. So I was, you know, when I talked to Elmer, um, my co-animator, I think once the pandemic had hit, we kind of joked that, oh, we were kind of like preparing this for this. You know, we were kind of in like work from home mode anyway, working on the film. That being said, you know, I'm a very extroverted person, and I love the collaborative environment of an animation studio or any creative endeavor. So it is tricky. I think for film festivals too. Where I think some of the greatest joys of being in a film festival are just meeting other people and networking and exchanging ideas. Like, you know, it's hard because you can't do that physically, but like this festival and others, you know, they've accommodated with Zoom and other, I think they call them like quarantinis now or something I've heard, mixers. And so as long as there's some social element, I think that helps. Because if it's just pure isolation, it's too much. Because you know, I don't know about the folks out there who are doing live action, but at least for animation, it's literally just sit down and work all day, and then you go get lunch. Which there's pros and cons, right? But it's a pretty you don't want it to start feeling like you're out there floating on the International Space Station after a while. So whatever it takes to keep in touch with people.
Hey, I mean, it beats traveling to work, so I
Oh,
mean,
that's
kind of
that's
keeps things easier.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
I know that Asian representation
Mm,
is, you know, kind of on the rise now with the movie and, you know, the film industry as a whole.
mm.
Um, how important is that for you as a filmmaker, seeing that, um, you know, kick in? Like, do you see that continuing to grow as, you know, as more projects keep popping up, you know, showcasing more representation in the Asian community?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's an important thing, and I like the way that it's going. I think particularly because now we're starting to see more and more Asians start to trickle into the creative leadership positions. You know, the writers' room, the on directorial, you know, rounds, making the executive level creative decisions of a show or film. Um, I don't think we're quite there yet, but it's happening. It's just more fun and more colors, and I'm all about that. You know, it doesn't really like I could care less about me. You know, as long as there's like plenty of people at the party and we're all having a good time, then you know, bring everybody on over. Um, and I think too you know, it's like I learned something so profoundly from everybody. I mean, I've watched a bunch of the opening block from this festival, for example. Um, you know, the opening night film was really something else. And yeah, we should all be encouraging that more participation.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm,
Definitely one way to, you know, look at it as a whole with, you know, trying to, you know, bring this out into the open with all these films coming out, and especially with this
mm.
festival. Um, I just want to say thank you so much for creating such a lovely film. I noticed that you're into rabbits, so I like that you got that nod in there with this film. So that's incredible that you got to put that in there. Um,
Yeah, you did your research. That's right.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your film. Best of luck to you with all your future endeavors, and I hope that many more people get to see all the work that you've been doing so
Yeah.
far.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and if for anybody out there who just wants to keep track of what the film's up to, I mean, just visit onelastmonster.com for more info. So,
Yeah, definitely. You guys definitely check this film out. It's currently playing at the Korean American Film Fest right now. You can check it out on the website. Uh, Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the film fest, and you guys take care. Thank you so much, Gene, for
thank you.
talking.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.